Hello, good evening, children. How are you? I hope you all are doing very well. Now, in today's session, here I, Mrs. Sucheta Sehgal, is with you to discuss on the chapter The End of the Bipolarity. End of the Bipolarity, very important chapter from the book The Contemporary World Politics. My dear students, there was a lot of demand from students' side to discuss this chapter, and especially the demand was on last year's questions. Okay, so I tried to collect all these questions for you, but you need to open your book. Without your NCERT book, you won't be able to understand these questions and you won't be able to follow my lecture also. Okay, now there are many questions which I am going to discuss in this session, but in this for one video I would be focusing on like few 5 questions right here, and then once you are clear with these 5 questions, you will have to go to my next video for the next questions from the same chapter. End of the bipolarity, the very important chapter. I already said, my dear students, here I am with my first question. Right now, the first question says, like you can see, first you need to follow my language also, what I am going to read out. Okay, identify the event that took place in 1989 which led to the collapse of the Second World and the end of Cold War. Now, there are always some few, you can say, the key words in each and every question. So, my dear students, you need to focus on these key questions, key words. I'm so sorry to say, key words which are there in each and every questions. With the help of these key words, you can very easily answer your questions here. Okay, now it's so simple to look for this answer here. You can see the first chapter, like the chapter 2, first page. When we open, there is an overview. My dear students, please, it's my request, don't overlook, don't ignore this portion which is given right in the beginning of the chapter. Okay, overview. The Berlin Wall, which had been built at the height of the Cold War and was its greatest symbol, was toppled by the people in 1989. So please, this year 1989, very important year. See, the language what is given, I'm reading again this language to you. The Berlin Wall, which had been built at the height of the Cold War. Now, Cold War is such an important topic, which is not there in your CBSE syllabus. But I mean, I need to tell you here, you need to know what is Cold War. The Cold War was a friction between US and USSR, that is, the Western Hemisphere and the Eastern Hemisphere, the two superpowers, the two ideologies. This was an ideological rift between USSR and US, that is capitalism and socialism. Okay, and this wall which was built at this time, this is toppled in 1989. So this dramatic event was followed by an equally dramatic and historic chain of events that led to the collapse of the Second World and the end of Cold War. So simple here. The question, it says to identify the event. You have to identify the event. An event is given. This is the event. Event is when this Berlin Wall was toppled. Okay. Now, the next thing here, the next point you can add on this point also. Germany divided after the Second World War was unified. The Berlin Wall, which was dividing these East Germany and West Germany here, the unification of Germany take place, and the end of Cold War also happened to be after the, fall of this Berlin Wall. Now, Soviet Union stood by as the Cold War. See, look at here. You can see my finger where I put it here. Not by military means, but as a result of mass actions by ordinary men and women. Eventually, the Soviet Union itself disintegrated. Now, what happens sometimes, my students, they have been confused. Like the disintegration of Soviet Union took place in 1991 here. Okay, fine. Disintegration of Soviet Union has taken place in 1991 when, the Gorbachev reforms were introduced. This portion we'll be discussing later on here. But here the question says event. For event, you have to mention about Berlin Wall here. Okay, right? So this question, the first question is clear. I hope this question is clear to each one of you. Now, I come to my next question right here. So this is the language which is there in the board. So please follow my language, what I'm using this. Okay, this is exactly what is asked by the boards here. Another question here. The Soviet economy was more developed than the rest of the world except for the US after the end of Second World War. Substantiate the statement with the example here. See, now the first question which I gave you, this was right number 18. The first column and 1, 2, 3, the last paragraph. Okay, very simple. You can easily find out here. It is given here. You can see to it here how it is, from where you can find out here. I think you can see here. The Soviet Union became a great power after the Second World War. Okay, Soviet economy was more developed. It is written here. Soviet economy was more developed than the rest of the world except for the US. Correct here. This is a statement, and this statement you have to prove. How you are going to prove it here? Because your question says here, substantiate the statement with the example. So with the help of example, you have to tell here, this was Soviet economy was more developed than the rest of the world except for the USA. This is what you have to find out here. Okay. See, this is a statement given. From here, the statement is copied by the board here, and then your answer starts right from here. Now, what is the answer? It had a complex communication network. This is the point. They're telling you, they're explaining how it was more developed than the rest of the world here. Okay. Vast energy resources were there, including, you can say, oil, iron and steel. Then, see in continuation, I'm continuing. See here, what is given here? Machinery production and transport sector that connected remotest areas with efficiency. Suppose I leave these points here. You don't need to mention these points here. Then you can come to this line. What is there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. After this 8th line, this line says, Soviet state ensured a minimum standard living for all citizens. So minimum standard of living. This is the second point. You can take the second point here. Okay. Children and the welfare schemes. There were so many schemes which were there in there for the interest of children. There were so many, you can say, areas which were taken care in these areas here. So there was no unemployment. State ownership was the dominant form of ownership. Land and production assets were owned and controlled by the Soviet state here. Because one thing more you need to know here only, it is mentioned Soviet state. Soviet state, that means because Soviet Union was a communist state here, okay, and a communist ideology, communism they have adopted, and the policy, like the schemes, the programs were based on socialism, which stands for where the public sector dominates. The means of productions are controlled by the state here. Okay, right here. So this answer you can very easily take it from these, two columns only, right here. This is exactly given, the language is given, the statement is given, and then with the help of this statement you can take these points right here. So I come to an end to this second question. Now there is another question which I am going to take care today only, right, in this video. Okay, correct. Name the republic that succeeded Soviet Union after its integration. What was its position in the international domain? So simple. Name the republic that succeeded Soviet Union. If this question is asked in this way also here, the successor state of Soviet Union. Successor state of Soviet Union was Russia. So Russia became the successor state of Soviet Union. Now the second part of this question says here, what is the second part of this question? What was its position in the international domain? As far international domain is concerned, the position which was occupied by Soviet Union, same is occupied by Russia also here. Now, in what sense, suppose I tell you here, like, about UNO. UNO is also in your syllabus. UNO, there is Security Council, and the 5 permanent members are there in Security Council. And out of these 5 permanent members, you find this Russia also here. Okay, Soviet Union, and then successor state when 1991, this disintegration take place and Russia becomes a successor of Soviet Union here. Now I come to this page number 20. For this answer, you can very easily see where I put my finger here. Okay, you can see this, what I say. Russia. Look, can you see this line? Page number 20, first column, and you can follow this here. Russia was now accepted as the successor state of Soviet Union. It inherited the Soviet seat in the UN Security Council. Russia accepted all the international treaties and commitments of the Soviet Union, right here. And then the last line says the old Soviet Union was thus dead and buried. Okay, correct. Now, come to next question, right? Next question, why did the Soviet Union disintegrate? Why did Soviet Union disintegrate? Dear children, suppose you are able to understand this question, you will understand entire chapter. Correct here? I'm repeating. If you understand this topic, you understand entire chapter here. Because the language says, why did the Soviet Union disintegrate? In your previous portion, you have seen, we again and again we are saying, Soviet Union was very strong, Soviet Union was very powerful, Soviet Union was not less than the West and all. In so many areas we have compared here. But still, why suddenly this such a powerful country disintegrated? There were many reasons which were responsible for the disintegration of Soviet Union. Look at this language which is given here. And the language says, this is the language which is asked in the board. Why did the Soviet Union, the second most powerful country in the world, suddenly disintegrate? Can you see this line? Page number 20, last paragraph, first 3 lines. And this is the question. This is a question. I hope it's clear to you from where this question is taken here. Okay. Now, when you have to answer this question here, you will have to find out the reasons which were responsible for the disintegration of Soviet Union here. There were so many reasons here. You need to know the entire Soviet system. If your Soviet system is clear, you can easily understand suddenly this Soviet Union, how it is being disintegrated. Now, the answer starts from here. There are unique features of Soviet collapse. You can see this line. There are unique features of Soviet collapse here. Now, what are these? And I must tell you here, before answering to this question, even you can have this question also here. Suppose, instead of this direct question asked, and when the question is asked this way, mention the unique features of Soviet collapse. Answer remains same. Here. Okay. Now the points which you have to cover from here. Okay. Now what are these points here? First point is internal weakness. See, I'm not giving you anything from anywhere. This is all given in your book. They're all given in the book here. But you need to read out. You need to follow each and every line properly. Okay. Internal weakness of whose? That is Soviet Union. Political economic institution will fail to meet the aspirations of the people. Correct? And responsible for the collapse of system. Right? 1 point. Then economic stagnation. For how many years? For many years. Which led to consumer shortages, and large sections of Soviet society began to doubt and question the system, and to do so openly. Okay. Then you come to this line, another reason. The Soviet economy used much of its resources in maintaining nuclear and military arsenal, right? And the development of its satellite states in Eastern Europe and within the Soviet system. This led to a huge economy burden that the system could not cope with. You can see all these points here. Very simple points which are given here. Soviet economy uses much of its resources in maintaining nuclear and military arsenal and the development of its satellite states in Eastern Europe and within the Soviet system here. Obviously, a lot of defense expenditure is taking place here. So there were some areas which were neglected here. Correct? So the fall of, you can say, economy started taking place. This led to a huge economy burden that the system could not cope with. The line is very clear. Then another point you can write this also here. After years of being told that the Soviet system was better than Western capitalism, and I must tell you this point because so many times it was said to these Russians, the Soviet people, like we are not less than the West here. But in reality, when they came to know later on here, the reality was very shocking. See here, it's given here. What is given? The reality of its backwardness came as a political and psychological shock. Soviet Union had become stagnant in administrative and political sense also. So these are the points, which you can cover for answering this question, which I right now, explain to you. And the question, I'm repeating the question which we had discussed here. That is, why did the Soviet Union, the second most powerful country, that is certainly disintegrate here. Okay, right? So this way you can come to an end to this question, but there are so many other areas also which you will be covering here. And the next part of this question, this chapter, which is very, very important, that is about the reforms which were introduced by Mikhail Gorbachev. For this part, you will have to move to my next video, right? You keep on following, you keep following me, and in every video you'll be getting the new points and new questions. And especially these days, I'm only focusing on your most important questions which are time to time asked by the boards. See you till then. Thank you. Bye bye.